The year is 1876. America is celebrating its 100th anniversary, 100th birthday. General George Armstrong Custer and the 7th Cavalry are wiped out at the Battle of Low Bighorn. The James Younger Gang is pretty much wiped out at the Northfield, Minnesota bank robbery. And here in southwest Minnesota, the Hastings and Dakota Railway purchased this land from the U.S. government and named it Renville Station. Of course, today it's shortened to Renville. In 1878, Renville was platted and incorporated in 1906. Right over here on the other side of the train cars is where the original train depot sat. If I'd been here 2 months earlier, you could have actually saw the darn building, but I procrastinated. And now all you get to see is the concrete foundation. But it goes to show, if you see something, record it now, because you never know when it's going to be torn down. This would have been the center of activity for Renville Station. Train would have came through, dropped people off, loaded up water and coal, and headed either east or west to the next town, which is 5 to 7 miles down the track. To the west it had been Sacred Heart, Minnesota. To the east it had been Danube, Minnesota. The towns were spaced apart so the trains could pick up coal and water. Eventually they carried supplies and equipment and food and to supply the towns. But this would have been the center of activity in Renville Station. This is where everything would have happened. This is where you would have walked into the depot. On the right would have been a 2-story building. It's where all the people came, the offices. On the left, this is where they would have stored all the freight that was being brought into telegraph offices over here. And like I said, the 2-story part was torn down a long time ago. But the part where the telegraph office and all the freight was kept, it was torn down about 2 months ago. And then slowly, around this place right here, the town of Renville grew up around it, which today there's about 1,300 people. Now you're probably wondering, the name of the video is the historic ghost town of Vicksburg, Minnesota, not Renville. So you're probably wondering, what does Renville have to do with Vicksburg? Well, stay and watch the rest of the video, and at the end of the video you'll find out what these two towns have in common. This is a trail to the historic graveyard of Vicksburg. Now, back in 1870, when the cemetery was first made, this would have been all open grounds. This is 150 years of tree growth, but the top of this hill would have been all barren. Now, if you go on YouTube, you can see all kinds of videos the most haunted cemetery in Minnesota, and there's a couple videos on this cemetery. The tombstones are supposed to glow, and you see haunted people, of apparitions of a woman, children. I've been back here multiple times. I've never seen that, but then again, I've never looked for it neither. That's not the purpose of this. But this is basically all that remains of the historic town of Vicksburg is the cemetery. Now, after we get done here, I'll go down below where the actual town site actually sat. There's a couple things down there that's really cool, but I thought I'd start up here in the cemetery. A lot of people, a lot of kids in here. If you notice, there's John Okins. There's a lot of relatives still around here. Fought in the Minnesota infantry in the Civil War. And when they all came back, they moved to Vicksburg. It was named Sacred Heart at the time. But it was renamed after the recent victory over in Vicksburg, Mississippi. And speaking of John, right here's his tombstone. The family just had it replaced. Here's what's left of his old one. So there's still parts of his family that comes and visits. Now, there's a story about why they leave quarters, pennies, and dimes and stuff. I can't remember the significance of it, but there is a reason people do that. Now, I don't know what's going on with like the rocking horse and the animals on. This just started, I noticed it a couple months ago, so I don't know if they had a celebration out here commemorating something, or but a lot of grave sites have those little animals on them now. But I mean, most of them you can't even read the tombstones anymore. It looks like it was a veteran tombstone at one time, but who it is, I have no clue. Now this one, when we first started visiting the cemetery, this one was actually kind of creepy. There was 2 or 3, yeah, this is the Manny A. She was like really young when she died. But the first time we came here, you can see the animals and some stuffed animals down there. Hopefully you can see it. Here's some more. That's a Bickle, Anna Bickle, I believe it says. But first time we came here, on each corner of this fence here, there's like little baby dolls. So that was actually kind of creepy when we first saw it. Now someone took them down. And a lot of times, you know, this is such a private cemetery. Unfortunately, people come out and vandalize it, kids and stuff too. So that kind of sucks. Got flowers for somebody? Now it makes you wonder. You see some of the gravestones. John over there is the best one, but you just wonder how many people are out here that you don't see the tombstones. How many more graves are we walking over? This one, you can't even make out who it was. But on the sign I showed you when we first walked in, it had a lot of the people that are here listed. Kind of like this entrance though. This is rather unique. I don't know if this is original to the cemetery or someone made it later. Or... That was the M.A. Bickle that was in the fence. Nana Bickle, they were in the fence, so they're 7 years old. And the other one we don't know. And supposedly back here to the right, where I'm showing right now, and like I said, this was all cleared when they first made the cemetery. There was another church, and a few rods away from the church, now what a rod is, I have no clue, there was a school. We walked all over through there, but we could not find any remains of the buildings or anything like that. But at one time, this was very active. And it would have been kind of cool because the town is down in the valley. So when you're up here, you can look down on the town. And when I first... So back in the 1870s, I think this would have been a really, really neat place to live. Kind of peaceful. If you think about it, a peaceful place to be buried up here on the hill. I mean, it's all covered by trees and now, but like I said, back then it was not. But you can hear the animals, the birds. There was a deer off in these trees. I could hear them. I couldn't see them. You can see the highway now. Across the highway, there was, like I said, another church built right over there. Now, I can't imagine back all those years ago, the highway, of course, would not be here. It'd be kind of cool. Was there a wagon path up here, or was there nothing, you know? So, but it's very beautiful here in the Redwood River Valley. A lot of history here. 1862 Indian War. The town, a lot of the towns in this area was platted before 1862, but because of the Indian uprising, this part of Minnesota was empty. I mean, everybody left. There's approximately, I don't know, 800 whites that were killed. And I'll get into that later because the River Valley is awesome. I mean, the history down there, the history itself is not awesome because of what in this part of Minnesota have been the Dakota Indians, because what they did. But if you look into why they did it, I mean, the U.S. government was basically stealing their land and not paying them for it, starving them. So they did what they had to do. So you can argue about the Indian War. It was about a 6-8 week war, if you want to call it, during the Civil War. Atrocities on whites and Indians. I mean, but when you study it, you gotta go back to the way things were back in 1862, not in 2025. Okay, here's the sign of the Vicksburg Village. Obviously, you can read that yourself. But Long before Vicksburg was established, a Frenchman, Charles Patterson, set a trading post along the Minnesota River to the east of this location. Known for his bearskin hat and bear considered sacred by the natives, Mr. Patterson became known as Sacred Hat, which turned into Sacred Heart as the first name of the village. Nearly a century later, in 1866, James Hawkins settled to the area after serving for Company K of the Minnesota Infantry during the Civil War, which we just saw his tombstone up on the hill up there. From 1869 to 1878, many of the village inhabitants were Civil War veterans. Therefore, were members of the past battle of Vicksburg, Mississippi. The village changed its name to Vicksburg on February 10th, 1871. During its peak, Vicksburg included a general store, a creamery, sawmill, church, school, blacksmith shop, organ press, doctor's office, and a saloon. Ferry service started on June 2nd, 1877. Ferry ran any hour of the day, going back and forth across the river, powered by hand with a series of ropes and tackle. An all-day pass cost 5 cents. The ferry became obsolete when the bridge was built, which we can see part of the remains where the ferry was, in 1888. The combination of a new railroad to the north, which when I started the video, we were up in Renville. That was the demise of this town, was that railroad. That's why I started up in Renville, showing you the railroad. That's why Renville was known as the new Vicksburg. Many townspeople experienced income loss. I mean, there wasn't a lot of income back then. So when the ferry was replaced, right there's a picture of the ferry, which I'll include. And then the railroad, they lost all their income. So by 1901, there was nothing left of Vicksburg. Many of the business owners were located to Renville. This being why Vicksburg is sometimes considered the father city of Renville. Now, if we walk back here, you can see just to the north, up there, that's where the cemetery would have been located. So there's a little bit of distance from the actual town site. I'm sure the kids, you know, and they would have walked. Ma and Pa, they would have took the horse and wagon up to church. Now they have County Road 6 running through here. Back then it was probably just a wagon trail. But yeah, up on top of that hill up there, that's where the cemetery would have been located. And then they come back down here to the town site. Now, they say there's cement slabs where the buildings used to stand. Tell you the truth, I didn't know they had cement slabs. They built on cement slabs back then. But I was able to find one, which I'll show you. But they say the village sat right here. Now, like when I was over in Beaver Falls, which would have been the county seat of Renville County. The one thing, you got all these trees now. Back then, a lot of these trees would not have been here, so you could have got a better picture of what things would have looked like back then. But most of the town, I believe, sat over here. So that's where we'll go next. Now, right here, this is where I believe the actual town site of Vicksburg sat. The only reason being, as I said, the buildings sat on concrete slabs. And there is one up here. Like I said earlier, not that I'm a construction expert, because I'm not, but didn't know they used concrete slabs back in the 1870s. So, but this is, I only found one. So this is where I think the actual town site of Vicksburg sat. I mean, once again, you got to imagine none of these trees were here. You know, well, the trees were here, but not as overgrowth, because, like I said, there's a town site that actually sat here. So, but this is why I think this is where the town site sat. Now here is the only concrete slab I could find. Now, it's up to you whether you want to believe it or not. People that know more, lot more than I do could probably argue. Maybe they didn't use it, but according to everything I could read, they said they sat on these slabs right here. So, which building? I have not found any pictures of the actual town site. While I was reading, they said I listed all the businesses that were here earlier, and they did have a post office. It opened in 1871, and it closed in 1881. Now, the first postmaster of Vicksburg was a John Larkin. Now, I do know up past the cemetery there, north of the cemetery, there are a couple Larkins that live up there. Whether related or not, I haven't got the chance to go talk to them because I haven't figured out how do you start that conversation. So, but I do believe this is where the town site sat. And it's a very interesting area. I mean, not only do you have the trees, but once we get back over here, and maybe you can see it through the trees here, they have a lot of these rocks and granite coverings. So we've been a very picturesque town. Like I said, here's where one of the buildings would have stood. And then right behind the building, you got the old rocks. And it would have been a scary time too, because like I said previously, 1862, this area was vacant by whites, because in August, well, it actually started on August 17th, I believe, over in Akron, Minnesota, where 4 Braves killed 5 white people. Then they came back to the, I think it was the Upper Sioux Agency, and told the chiefs and stuff what they've done. And then the actual Indian War started August 18th at the Lower Sioux Indian Agency. And by seeing some of this land, I mean, I can only imagine. I mean, if I was a Dakota Indian, I'd been fighting for it. This is beautiful land, especially through the river valley here. The river valley goes all the way from South Dakota to the west of us, all the way up to Minneapolis, St. Paul on the east of us. But Renville County is known for its fertile soil. So a lot of people wanted this land, and they didn't care how they took it. Now it's hard to imagine just off that one foundation how the rest of the town would have been laid out. I mean, you have sawmill that was operated by George Reed, church, school, blacksmith shop that was owned by Peter Paquette, known as Pack. Sorghum press. It's where they got the juice out of the sugar cane. Then there's a doctor's office. But I think this would have been actually a really cool place to live. It's just, I wish I knew more how to find town plat pictures so we could actually see how the town was laid out. Like I said, I can only find, they said there's more foundations but I could only find that one. We'll have to come back out here in the fall once all the vegetation goes away. This is this time of year you get all kinds of ticks, and I just don't want to go walking through the tall weeds if we don't have to, unless we see something good. Now they have signs. There's a county park. They switched it. It was Renville County. Now it's Vicksburg County Park. And it's a really nice park. Just being that it's a county park instead of a state park. State parks, you have park rangers and stuff. County park, no one really patrols that at night. Now they did have a ferry that started in 1877 that ran across the river. And that's what we're going to be coming up to next. Just think it's kind of cool walking through where I believe the town actually sat. And how this would have been full of people and just busy spot. People living their normal lives. Over to my left is the Minnesota River, and that's why this town was built here, because before the railroad, that river would have been full of steamships. I'll include some of the names. I can't recall the steamships that used to run up and down, but that would have been the main form of transportation. So I'm sure in other places too. But in Minnesota, you got a lot of these towns that no longer exist sitting alongside the river. And then once the railroad came, obviously they moved up to where the railroad was. It's hard to believe you can get lost in a ghost town, but I am. Right here is one of the campsites. Not much here. I mean, you're basically out on your own. But here's a view of the river, the Minnesota River, and some of the countryside. Now, I'm not far off because I believe the bridge that put the ferry out of business sits right over here. But I'm glad I came back here. It wasn't planned, but you can see some more of the land outside of town. Sure, the kids of the town had a ball out here. Lots of places to run and climb and hide. Now, thank God in Minnesota, or at least southern Minnesota, the worst snake we have is a gardener snake, so they're not poisonous, so I wouldn't be back here. I hate snakes. Hoping by coming through here, maybe we'd find some more foundations, but I was wrong. I love seeing these big rock foundations. I mean, as a kid, oh my gosh, the fun you could have had back here. Just running and exploring. Breaking an ankle. Okay, I think I'm the only person I got lost in a ghost town. Now we're back on track and I'm back where I wanted to be. It's kind of funny how once you start getting back in the trees and start looking at stuff, all of a sudden you realize, uh-oh. But we made it back. And now we're coming up on the site where the ferry would have ran. Like I said, that ran from 1877 to, what was it, June 2nd, 1877. That was ran by, well, that's another good question. Who was it ran by? Now the ferry was ran by the Robert W. Davis family. They owned it. I don't know if you can see it, but there's Andrew taking it easy while I'm getting lost. But here's where the ferry would have ran across the river. The Davis family living a couple miles south of here. There's some old houses they probably lived in, but I don't know for sure. But then the ferry was put out of business. It was way over there, I don't know if you can see it, was the bridge they built in 1888. And that was the start of the downfall of Vicksburg. And I don't know what it is with the numbers, but the ferry was 1877, this bridge was 1888, and then the current bridge that's being used now was built in 1977. But east of here around that river bend in low tide there have been 3 rocks they say that sticks out. That's where Charles Patterson had his trading company right down there. But you know, in the 1840s, 50s, 60s, 70s, this river would have had ferries or steamships running up and down, and paddle boats. And that's troops from the cities running down here to camp Fort Ridgely, bringing troops, bringing people. This would have been a very, very busy river. And I have pictures of some of those steamboats. I'll include that too, so you can see what they look like. But this was the beginning of Vicksburg because of that bridge and the railroad 6 miles north. That was the end of Vicksburg. And all that's all left is just a couple traces if you were willing to look for it.